Hello. We are back. We are live. How's it going? We're going to do a historical content notice right at the beginning here because we're going to go into some stuff on the slideshows. We're going to do some deep talks into some of the stuff that we've been talking about leading up to, and everything that we've been leading up to on our watch alongs has brought us to where we're at now. So we're going to be jumping into that. Historical content notice. The following program contains authentic, unedited footage from the World War II era. The material may include racial stereotypes, offensive depictions, and symbols of hate, including Nazi imagery, as well as wartime propaganda which reflect the attitudes and realities of the time. These films are presented the original, produced without alteration or censorship for the purpose of historical record, education, and discussion. Mission 4938 does not endorse the views, language, or depictions shown. Viewer discretion is strongly advised, and this may be the last week for a little bit. We'll be seeing some of these in here because we're going to be switching over to some Cold War stuff for a little bit. And this is kind of the end of World War II. We're starting to get into the Cold War, just the kickoff of it, and we will be jumping in from there. So we're going to jump into our slideshow real quick. Kind of where we're at. We kind of finished up the war here on the last stream. Hey there, I see Historic Opossum. How you doing? So what we're looking at here is the breakdown after the war in Europe. We're not going to focus as much right yet on what's going on in Japan and in the Pacific. We're going to be focusing on that in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to be looking at the 1950s kind of era right here, late 40s, early 50s. There will be a few things that maybe drift in from the 60s, but mainly in that time period. So what we're looking at is the breakdown. So you see France over here, Germany, Ireland, the UK, Italy, Switzerland. So you're kind of seeing the different areas that are broken up. So all of this that is in the light gray became satellite states to the Soviet Union, known as the Eastern Bloc. Everything to the west became the Western Bloc. And you're looking at how they broke things up. So into Germany, that became part of the Soviet Union, and also territory lost from Poland in 1945. This was the breakdown of that. Here you can kind of see the Berlin there and how it was broken up. And again, kind of a closer look into this area. So this all came from the Potsdam Conference. I know we've talked about that a little bit before. The Potsdam Conference, in it we had Harry Truman, Joseph Stalin, Winston Churchill was there for part of it, and then Clement Attlee was there. That was from July through August of 1945. Germany was divided up into occupation zones. Reparations were debated. Borders were redrawn. So what was really happening in this is we had been allies with the Soviet Union. I had said that during these watch-alongs where they were really praising the Soviet Union was going to come to an end pretty quickly, and it did. Even before the war was really over, the U.S. and the USSR went from allies to kind of competing views. Soviet expansion in the Eastern Bloc was really something that was upsetting the U.S. as well as the U.S. not willing to share any of its atomic research. The Cold War started here at Potsdam. There was already kind of a little bit of a starts of a Cold War going on, where Russia was trying everything it could to get through Germany before the U.S. could get to Germany, and it was kind of a race, even to the point that somewhat the U.S. and Russia, the Soviet Union, the USSR, were sabotaging each other on their ways through. So there was espionage, arms race tech, everything going on through that. So one of the other things that really shaped a lot of this and shaped what we're going to be seeing is also through here, we'll jump out a little further, was jumping into the space age. So both the USSR and the United States were both going after the rocket engineers from Germany. So you had the V2 rocket program developed by Nazi Germany. It was the first ballistic missile ever. It was the first human-made object to get anywhere near space. They traveled at supersonic speeds, and they were impossible to intercept at the time. It was the foundation of your ICBM. It was the foundation of your space rockets. So as Germany was collapsing in April, May 1945, Allied forces were closing in, and leadership ordered destruction orders for the Nazis. Nazis were saying, destroy everything. Don't let them get any of our technology. And so they were, it was called the Nero Decree. destroy all the infrastructure, destroy any resources. And you had the rocket team situations. Hans Kammler relocated 450 engineers. They were guarded by the SS. They were high value targets. You had people like Wernher von Braun, Wernher von Braun had actually he was a member of the SS, and he had been arrested by the SS because they were telling them go to the front line and fight. And they were saying, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep doing our rocket research. We're going to keep looking into it. So we'll kind of highlight a few things and get them out of the way right off the bat. So Wernher von Braun was a member of the SS. We'll jump over here and see if we can. Right here we got Wernher von Braun with Walt Disney. He was a member of the SS. They were using concentration camps to build their rockets, and it didn't care what happened to the people building the rockets. They were going to work them as long as it took and as many hours as it took to get it done. So he was Wernher von Braun was the leader of the V2 rockets. He was an SS officer. He worked with the Nazi regime. The V2 productions used forced labor from concentration camps. Thousands died in creating them. He dispersed his team to avoid execution. The German high command had put down to kill instead of allowing them to be captured by the U.S. or the USSR. They hid their research. And one of the things that people don't realize is that Wernher von Braun was lying to the Nazis to get away from them. They were going to have them all put on a train and sent over to actually fight and use rifles. And so he faked some paperwork and commandeered a train and had that train get him closer and closer to the U.S. border. Wernher von Braun did not want to be in the Soviet hands. He wanted to get to the U.S. He felt in the United States he could continue on his rocket research. So he thought they would treat him better and they would allow space for development. They did not think that the Soviets would allow that. And in reality, what Wernher von Braun did was he used his brother, who was also a physicist and a rocket scientist, to go and surrender to an American private. They went out searching for them, and when they found them, they surrendered and went over. But before the U.S. could get him back to the United States, the British got him for a little bit to interrogate him and get as much information as they could on how to build rockets themselves. And this was the launch of Operation Paperclip. 1,600 scientists were brought to the U.S., including Wernher von Braun's team of 450. The U.S. knowingly recruited former Nazis because of the Cold War urgency and moral concerns. The U.S. was saying that they did not feel they could morally allow these people to go over to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, was capturing factories, equipment. They got some scientists and built a program under Sergei Korolev. So you're looking at rockets in this. You're looking at ICBMs, nuclear warheads, long-range strike capabilities, space tech, all that kind of stuff. So again, early development. We're going to jump back over here. So this is Sputnik. If you have ever heard of Sputnik, it's the first man-made object put in space. And we're going to hear a little bit of sound from Sputnik right now. So this is the actual sound of Sputnik. That's what you would have heard from Sputnik. So Sputnik was a research satellite for the USSR. It was launched October 4th, 1957. It shook the United States because here's the thing. There was a fear of a missile gap. If they could launch an object into space and have it continuing to go around the globe, they were afraid, okay, they can hit us with a missile. If they can do this, they can get us. And it became this huge fear and all-consuming fear for the United States. So the U.S., under the U.S. Army Space Program, began working on Explorer 1, and we'll show you Explorer 1. Right, here we go. Explorer 1 right there. Wernher von Braun right there at the very end on the far side, pictured holding up the rocket. And so that went up January 31st, 1958. And NASA was created July 29th, 1958, because they looked at this as a whole we have to do something. So there are some pretty major discoveries by Explorer 1 and Sputnik. Um, One of the things that Sputnik was done is it showed that a satellite will not decompose in space rapidly, because that was a fear. Um, the other thing it showed is that you could orbit, because there was some fear that we believe you can orbit. The science is there for orbiting, but there was also a fear that what if we get it up there and we're wrong and gravity just yanks it straight down. It did not have much on it on Sputnik 1. It weighed 184 pounds. It had 4 antennas. It orbited Earth every 96 minutes. And that beep beep that you heard, that was a broadcast. It was a very simple radio broadcast. And that's what showed that you could broadcast from space. So it required a lot of work to get it up there. There wasn't a whole lot of technology on it. So Explorer 1 was our answer to it. It was a massive, we have to get it up in the air. Explorer 1 was really a scientific mission, whereas Sputnik was just a demonstration. And so one of the things that Explorer 1 discovered was the Van Allen radiation belts. These zones of charged particles trap the Earth's magnetic field, surrounded the Earth in layers, and this is how it was figured out. So we sent a Geiger counter up on it, a radiation detector, and it was picking that up, and it was sending those messages back. And so it kind of was our first real test and our first real scientific discovery. Radiation is a major hazard, and so this was able to show that the satellites could survive in it, and what kind of radiation we'd be looking at for astronauts and things like that. It changed what they thought, because they were originally thinking they could maybe use something like an airplane and get astronauts up there, and then they realized, oh no, we're going to have some shielding, specific flight paths. There was a lot that went into this. It was kind of a big thing. It didn't show that the U.S. had just caught the Soviet Union. We had actually surpassed them, because we were able to send up an actual experiment and conduct that experiment. So that's some of the early stuff here we're looking at with the space race and the start of the Cold War. But there was another interesting thing that kind of happened after the Cold War came to an end, or after the World War II came to an end. There was so much innovation. There was the invention of jets and rockets and radar and all these new inventions, and that caused Americans to dream. Americans like Walt Disney, Americans started dreaming of things that would be different, like looking at push button education. This is being imagined, put out in an actual magazine, and some of these are put out in newspapers, of what they thought the world of tomorrow would look like because of the advancements that happened during World War II. So they imagined that kids would have a teacher on screen and could work from desks where they could fill out formulas and participate with a teacher who wasn't present. And I mean, we're seeing that today. Right here, the wonderful world of a telecast from the moon and a wristwatch TV. And if you look at that, they have a glass pool where you can actually see through the pool, which we have that today. We don't have the levitating car, but we have the Apple Watches. We have the technology like that. So that's one of the technologies they're dreaming at the end of World War II. Closer Than You Think. This was a whole series done on, I believe it was the Chicago Tribune. And each one would include something they thought could happen in the future through technology being discovered from the wars and the new space excitement that was getting them. So they were looking at, you could have someone in Buenos Aires hire someone in the United States, and they could see each other and work on stuff from a distance. We have that today. We have Zoom. We have all these other remote work situations, and now more people than ever work from home through things not quite like this contraption they have there with a giant camera off to the side, but we have the ability to do things like this. Another thing they envisioned were self-driving cars, which is something we're kind of starting to see today. What's crazy though is their idea of having fun and relaxing in a self-driving car. They're all in there playing rummy or gin or something, looking at the number of cards they have. You have the electronic home library. So this was from RCA. RCA had just discovered how to record TV, where you could potentially even record TV shows from home when you weren't home. And so what they're talking about in this is the ability to project a book on the ceiling. They didn't have a concept of having a small handheld device that would have it, but they're sitting there looking at it. And if you look at the TV, it looks like it's projecting out. It's supposed to be like a 3D effect for TV, but there's just tons and tons of film reels behind them where they're just assuming you could record all this TV, and that's how the future would work. Another really wild technology piece. Again, this is closer than you think. They were imagining that you could take a holiday card, electronically send it, it would bounce off the moon, and then it could come down somewhere like Honolulu. But in their mind, they couldn't imagine the person could receive it directly themselves. So it would still have to have been printed by the U.S. mail, and the U.S. mail could just drop you off a small reel of all your mail miniaturized. So it kind of a weird version of email there, I guess, but we're able to do this. We don't bounce it off the moon. We bounce it off satellites. We bounce it off other things. But this is kind of what they were thinking and what they were looking at with future technologies. Another one, wall-to-wall television worldwide. I mean, if you've seen Costco ads recently, I think they have a 125-inch TV, and there are people that have wall-to-wall TVs. But this was talking mainly about not having to use vacuum tubes in their TVs, which is a thing of the past. We don't use them at all. But what is also extremely funny about this is they right here on it, it says something like, imagine having a small box that you could change the channel and volume and TV inputs. They hadn't, the remote control didn't exist. And so they were dreaming of a world of the future where you could use some kind of small square box that you could deal with the volume and channel on. And now for most of us, I mean, we have remotes in our home. You can change it from your telephone with some TVs. Some TVs you can change it with just your voice. So this kind of world of the future, these dreams that are coming out of World War II of how the world was going to get better and more efficient and make it a place better for everyone. Another one here is doing school from home. Again, just kind of the concept of it. You have the test, you have the TV instructor, you have the electronic notebook. You're not a typewriter. You're apparently writing everything by hand still, and you still have the analog clock on there. But they were picturing that as the world of tomorrow. You were going to be able to do school from home, which we saw a lot of that during the pandemic. Right here, we have ordering groceries while at the store with your voice instead of having to go pick them out. But today we have something even better. If you have Walmart Plus, you have DoorDash, you have Grubhub, you have Shipt, you have all these things where from the comfort of your home, you can order groceries and go pick them up or have them delivered to you. And this is kind of what they're imagining is, oh, the world's going to become so much more efficient. This is how it's going to look. This is how you're going to be able to do things so much faster and easier than ever before. The workstation of tomorrow, you have this guy's climbed into a contraption that's got a refrigerator, it's got a dictating machine, and it's kind of that same thing of people will be able to work from home, and how magical will that be? And today we have so many people that work from home. Luckily, you don't have to climb into a contraption like that to be able to do it. You'll be able to use your laptop and your cell phone and all your other technologies. Jump over here. The other one, they were dreaming of a way to get across the country quicker, but instead of airplanes, which had become major use during World War II. I mean, we had the jet, we had all these other things, but they still imagined it was going to be done by railroad, and it was going to be a completely robotic railroad that drove itself. You didn't need engineers. People could go to and from and get across the country within a matter of a couple days. Whereas we came up with airplanes and getting across the entire country in a matter of several hours. So it's kind of a change in kind of looking at that technology of what they're looking at. Again, this one is all about malls. They sit there and said, imagine being able to be in an area downtown, walking around where a bunch of shops are connected, and being able to kind of go and spend time and visit and do all of that. But we've kind of surpassed that, or we're in a post-mall world now where malls are closing down because it's so much easier to shop online and be able to see all the stuff that you want to buy from the comfort of your own home. So we're kind of in a post-mall world, but this is envisioning a world of malls, because that was not a thing prior to World War One, 1950s. I mean, they were coming out of the Great Depression. They just had this huge war that a majority of the country was involved in. It's just amazing what they thought could actually end up happening. This post war world where you were able to go through and just visit all these shops and be able to do everything else. And again, most places only had a few shops, especially in small towns. You only have 1-2 shops total, whereas this, you actually have a whole bunch of shops together, and that was kind of a vision of the future for them. And then again, I just found this one really funny. This one came from the 1950, I believe 1958. And their idea was a self-driving car so the family could sit and play Scrabble while they travel wherever they're going. Unfortunately, if you're looking at this, they're going right down the middle of a line. Like the middle of the road is right there in the middle of their car. Maybe that's how their car knew where it was going, was things built into the road. But this was kind of the vision of the future, post driving world, if you will. So we're going to take a look at a couple things tonight. One of those is something made by I believe, that talked about what they thought the vision of the world would be. And again, a lot of this comes from the fact that the war is over. There was so many new technology. There was so much excitement for the war to end, but also so much excitement for the Depression to be over and the new age of the middle class. And so we're going to be looking at that with, not with the Sputnik. We'll be looking at that with a dream. I think it's called A Dream of Tomorrow. So we'll jump into that right now. There we go. There we go. Sorry, I had to find the right one. Oh, Designed for Dreaming.
I dreamt last night the moon was so bright it melted
So,
the walls
again,
away,
this is kind of
and it wasn't
something, if
alarming.
we're going to turn the music down because I don't know how copyright on that one is. But this whole idea of, oh, the world is so much more exciting. This is 1958, 1957, I believe, somewhere in there. And they're kind of looking at what is the world going to look like in the future.
Just as I am.
Hey, girls don't go to Motoramas dressed in a pair of pink pajamas.
Maybe they don't, but I don't care. Haven't got a single thing to wear.
Quick, please, a gown.
Ooh, I'll be the talk of the town. Oh my!
Go after it, fly.
I followed my heart through the night past 1,000 windows.
And again,
yellow and
just
light.
just kind of wild looking at how they're looking at the world going
In the Waldorf
on this.
Astoria Hotel. I'm a girl who happens to think that a brand new car is better than me.
So again, how we're looking at this is they're showing off what they think the world of tomorrow is going to be like. And this wasn't just the average American. The reason we're showing this, and we're going to show a few more as we go through Cold War, because that Cold War enthusiasm of new technologies and atomic futures, which is what led to things like Fallout, the dream of this atomic future. That's kind of the route that they went in the Fallout universe. But what they're looking at here is just the ability to have a complete and total change of how the modern life was actually going. And whether it be through cars, right there you can see Chevrolet, these ideas of these brand new inventions and technologies and the way the new engines were going to work are so much different than anything that they were seeing before. And it's kind of, there's the commercialism layer in there, but there's also this, they're kind of playing on people's hopes and dreams of how the future is going to be so much different than anything they've ever seen before. And we picked, starting out over here with Chevrolet GMC, because it's such a unique look at it, how they did the waking up from a dream and you're going and seeing these new tomorrows. But we're going to get into a few others. We got GE, we have DuPont, who came out with some, and a lot of these manufacturers manufactured equipment during World War II and then switched over to back to regular civilian production after the war was over. And so we're kind of looking at their dreams of the future. And we kind of have those dreams of the future today. I mean, if you look at car commercials that are advertising what they think cars will be coming up with, whether it's the self-driving, the self-parking, some of those different features. Oh, we are getting into the kitchen, I believe.
You give him a break, and you end up in the kitchen baking a cake. But this was a kitchen like none I'd seen. Put a card in the slot, and onto the screen pops a picture of just how your dish will look, plus all the ingredients you need to cook. No need for the bride to feel tragic. The rest is push-button magic. So whether you bake or broil or stew, the Frigidaire kitchen does it all for you. Don't have to be chained to the stove all day. Just set the timer and you're on your way. Tick-tock, tick-tock, I'm free to have fun around the clock.
So again, what we're seeing is utilitarian use of things where, oh, I'm going to have time to go and relax and enjoy myself. These inventions are going to help save me the time so I can do all this other stuff. And that's kind of what you're looking at here, is everything they're looking at is a way of not necessarily adding something new to your life, but giving you more time to do what you want to do.
My cake is ready.
And somehow already candled.
Time for the show. Everybody on stage.
And again, it's a Chrysler commercial, but you saw Frigidaire kind of coming in there as well.
Dance of Tomorrow.
Everyone says the future is strange, but I have a feeling some things won't change.
Gotta love the dancing in this, right? And again, it's kind of
The dream cars of tomorrow.
the dream cars of tomorrow. So we saw Frigidaire's little piece of the ad in there, and now we're looking at some of the cars.
El Dorado Town Car by Cadillac.
Ensemble by Christian Dior of Paris.
And you're seeing all of these kind of coming together. The clothes and the cars and
Buick presents the sleek Centurion.
Driving Coat by Montesano of New York.
putting out who's making the driving coat and everything else in there.
Oldsmobile's elegant golden rocket.
Sports Outfit by Pat Primo of Los Angeles.
So we'll jump past some more of these ads.
And last of all, designed for the electronic highway of the future, the fabulous turbine-powered Firebird 2.
There you go. The turbine-powered Firebird 2 for the electronic highway of tomorrow. And again, just kind of their ideas of what the world is going to be. And that shapes us as well. We look at the technology we have. We just assume it's going to get better. They didn't assume there's going to be all these huge technological breakthroughs post-war. They just assumed all the technology they had was somehow going to get that much better and that much more magnificent. Not brand new, complete technologies.
Control tower, we are about to take off on the highway of tomorrow. Stand by.
Oh, call control tower. They're getting ready to take off. And we have them singing over here. So again, it's just kind of what they thought the highways would look like, what they thought the world was actually going to be like after the advancements and all the new technologies that they discovered during the war started getting brought in there and put together into this new and amazing way of life. And so we're kind of seeing these showdowns of different companies working together, whether it's clothing manufacturers, whether it's Frigidaire, whether it's Chrysler, kind of putting together that the world is going to be a much more grand place than it's ever been before. And so these are the same kind of visions and dreams that were getting passed through some of the world fairs after the war was over, getting passed along by other companies, and just kind of all pushing that same thing together. And I ask you to look at technology today and where they think it's going to go in the future. Because again, most of the time it's not new technology that we're dreaming of. It's the technology we have just being better than what it was before. And so now we're going to jump into a little bit of study on the U.S., or not the U.S., the Explorer 1, the United States program to have Explorer 1 up and going. Presented by the United States Army, because there's no NASA at this point. It's the United States Army. Army Research and Development. Army Explorers in Space. Yeah, not quite NASA yet.
This is your Army in action. An Army that has established throughout its history a solid record of achievement. It's a great fighting team that has distinguished itself in battle, most notably during 2 world wars and the conflict in Korea. It's an Army ever ready, trained for decisive action, and a formidable deterrent to limited or all-out war. Your Army has also built a tradition of accomplishment in other fields. Half a century ago, it moved mountains to achieve the miracle of the Panama Canal. It organized the best scientific talent in the nation and harnessed the tremendous energy of the atom. Today, in this missile age, men of the United States Army have been pioneering in the development of rocketry, spending long hours in classrooms and in the field, testing new theories and techniques so as to be ready to meet the challenge of the future. When such a challenge came in October 1957, the challenge of Sputnik, the Army was ready to meet it. On November 8th, the Secretary of Defense ordered the Army Ballistic Missile Agency in Huntsville, Alabama, to prepare to launch a satellite in support of the International Geophysical Year program. General John B. Medeiros and his crack team of missile scientists, headed by Dr. Wernher von Braun, eagerly set to work. Static firings rigorously tested performance of the main-stage rocket, a modified Redstone missile, in a race against time to meet a destiny only 84 days away. Meanwhile, across the nation, in Pasadena, California, other preparations were in high gear. At the Army's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, operated by the California Institute of Technology, urgent conferences took place. Army ordnance experts joined Dr. William H. Pickering and his staff of scientists to plan JPL's role in the American probe of outer space. Their job was to furnish the high-speed upper stages of the Jupiter Sea system and to construct the Explorer satellite itself.
So we'll talk about that real quick. JPL, they were all civilians. They also were incredibly distrusting of Wernher von Braun. They did not, for the first several days, didn't even let him onto the facility until the Army ordered them to do it. And those feelings continued on. I mean, you're looking at even after he passed away, when a school named its part of its science wing after him protest to have the name taken off because he was an SS officer and had worked so hard against so many countries and provided the bombs to to use them and was majorly assisted by concentration camps. And so JPL and Caltech were not thrilled with the idea of having Wernher von Braun on there. However, the Army kind of saw that, look, he has got this rocket science down to a pretty sophisticated level, and the Caltech group had better guidance systems and had a few better things than what he had, but he had them on the rocket engines. So this is kind of where we start seeing we're gonna smooth it over through this film, I have a feeling, but figured we would need to talk about that and kind of explain that out.
These men of science had long experience in Army missilery to help them solve the intricate satellite problem. Their efforts had previously helped make possible America's first supersonic surface-to-surface ballistic missile, the Army's Corporal, now stationed overseas. These scientists found the answers that enabled construction of the satellite to begin. The skills of many craftsmen were put to work. Sheet metal was bent and welded to form the outer shell of the satellite. Machinists worked wonders with metal and plastic. Components were meticulously tested.
Okay, I thought they were going to talk about more than they did. So the Army Corporal program, it was developed to put missiles in Europe in response to, I think it was 1954, the Soviet Union was able to test its first nuclear missile. And no one expected them to develop it that rapidly. However, because of kind of some spies and things sending information over to them, they were able to develop a nuclear bomb extremely rapidly. And so the United States created the Corporal program to make smaller nuclear missiles and other rockets. They could carry nuclear payloads, biological payloads, and chemical warfare payloads and attack the Soviet Union, because their thought was deterrence would keep the Soviet Union from pushing into the Western Bloc. And so JPL and Caltech were huge in creating that program. It wasn't necessarily a most successful program because they could launch it and get it to hit their target when they launched it on Caltech, but out in the field it wasn't quite as accurate. And they had some serious problems. In fact, the JPL team, along with Caltech, made a very funny video for the United States Army that showed all of the bloopers of them blowing up the rockets before they actually took off, or them taking off and blowing up mid-flight. But that's kind of the basis of the JPL Corporal program.
To make sure they would function properly. Rockets that had to give peak performance when spinning at high velocity. Radio transmitters too, spin tested and vibration tested. These relentless trials proceeded until the assembly of the satellite was finally at hand. The last stage rocket and its satellite measured about 6.5 feet long, half a foot wide, and weighed about 31 pounds. The satellite itself tipped the scales at a little over 18 pounds. Its payload of instruments, 11 pounds. Data were sent to Earth by 2 radio transmitters, each weighing about 2 pounds with batteries. The high-power one was designed to stay alive for several weeks, the low-power one for several months. Cosmic ray intensity was measured by this assembly, which contained a Geiger-Müller tube. Micrometeorite data was obtained by means of a microphone located on the exterior of the satellite. The microphone detected high-velocity meteoric dust which infests space. At the rear of the satellite and still on its outside skin, gauges recorded the same effect. These gauges were a series of grids made of extremely fine wire that registered each time a grid was broken by micrometeoric dust. To measure temperature, on the outside were 2 highly sensitive gauges called thermistors. Another temperature device was located inside, behind the instrumentation, and still another here, inside the nose cone. The ingenious instrumentation for the cosmic ray experiment was designed by Dr. James Van Allen and his associates at the State University of Iowa. Meanwhile, other special equipment for telemetering and tracking was being checked out, while awaiting the arrival of Jupiter-C and Explorer-1 at Cape Canaveral. Microlock and mini-track systems extending 5,000 miles downrange from the Cape to Britain's Ascension Island and at key receiver sites around the world. Antennas awaited arrival of the huge missile. The gantry crane waited. Now, in these last few days of January 1958, Jupiter-C arrives and is borne from the airfield to the fitting out hangar to undergo its final test. The bucket of solid fuel rockets undergoes a spin balance test, with Explorer-1 participating. The inertial guidance system of the main stage is also carefully checked. Then the bird is moved to the launching pad and into position. The spinning bucket is freshly painted before being placed on top of the main stage. Weather report, high velocity winds at 40,000 feet. No abatement in sight. The time for launching is postponed 1 day. But the wind velocities increase. Again, the firing time is set back. On January 31st, the upper level winds diminish to 120 knots. General Medeiros decides to wait no longer. Inside Central Control, the firing party goes into action. Step by step, circuits and recording instruments are checked out. Outside in the launching area, other technicians groom the huge bird for its plunge upward. Fueling with powerful hydine and liquid oxygen is completed. On the Cape, an air of cautious optimism prevails. The countdown is on schedule.
Finished fuel loading. Take a weight reading. Okay. Check the utility room fuel vapors and notify the blockhouse when we're clear to start generators. Control voltage on. Gyros on. Gyro erection on.
Regulator off. Charlie 110 recorder's on. This quarter on. Everything. Roger. Okay, we'll start now.
Check that lock loading has been completed.
Regulator off.
Roger.
Charlie 110 recorder's on. This quarter on. Everything. Roger. Okay, we'll start now.
Connect assembly to igniters. Okay, tie down the lead.
Regulator off.
Roger, and install your protective cap. Okay?
Regulator off.
Weight reading after last scaffold is removed. AFMCC telemeter calibration tape on. Start vibration and RPM recorders. Check all operating lights and meters for proper operation. Fire panel check. Fire panel okay. Control panel check. Roger. Measuring panel check. Roger. Cluster control panel check. Roger. Gyro erection off. Rudder drive on. Power transfer test on. Observe and record all voltages. Power transfer test on. Power transfer off.
Okay, we'll do a brief stop real quick. So part of what they're looking at here is they're going to have to launch this at night. And we have so many things when we're watching stuff launch right now. You can see satellite imagery. We can track it. We can see where it's going. The whole thing with Explorer 1 is they purposely launched it at night. They launched about 10:58 p.m. Eastern time from Cape Canaveral. And the reason why is it was impossible to see if it was making it out of the atmosphere during the daytime. There was no other way of tracking it. You had to track it by eye. And so they were launching it up, and they needed to have as much surety that, hey, look, it's up. It seems to be in the right direction, and it seems to be in the right stratosphere. The problem, though, is that you also had to wait to find out if you orbited, because there was no way to know. Like there wasn't the technology there was today, or there is today. So when they got it up, not only did you have to launch it and watch it go up, you would have to see it go out of view, and it would take 100 minutes for Explorer 1 to make one rotation, which had to be absolutely nerve-wracking. No one went home. They all stayed there. They once it got up, they went through and had a... We'll click this over and keep playing it. They had to call for the news to come in afterwards. And so you have your main leads of it. You had your Army personnel. You had Wernher von Braun. You had a few others that stayed up and watched for when it came back through orbit. And then they were going to hold a press conference. And this was such a huge, crucial piece that if this failed, they were going to be so far behind the Soviets, they didn't know what they would be able to do. This had to succeed. So all of these people, and it seems like there's a lot of equipment in that room, but most of that equipment could be outpowered by your smartphone now. There wasn't a whole lot of technology in there. There was some mathematical computations you can do, and you can do way more computations on a Texas Instrument scientific calculator now than you could have done in that room. But here they're kind of watching, kind of seeing how things are going, checking the readings on everything to get it up and launched. But again, 10:58 p.m. Eastern time. There we go. There's the launch. A massive amount of fuel to have a, what did they say, 18-pound satellite get up in space. This was...
January 31st, 1958.
There we go.
For another 2 hours, they would sweat it out. At the Cape, in Huntsville, and in Washington, waiting for the tiny satellite to race around the Earth and confirm the fact that Explorer 1 was in orbit.
Okay, pause this. This is a scientific, heavy scientific room, all these computers, and if you notice that one thing, all of them are in there smoking. Something that would not be allowed to happen today. But again, it's kind of one of those things of this is from the period very much of its time.
At last, General Medeiros could tell Washington the good news. The Army had come through. The challenge had been met. Within 2 months, other satellites would be borne aloft in a quest for knowledge that would unlock secrets in space long concealed from earthbound man and enable him to break free at last from the shackles of gravity. Beyond these first probes lay exploration of the moon, even the planets of our solar system. And beyond this, the universe itself.
So some really lofty goals there. They said other planets in our solar system and the universe itself, they would be able to go on and explore. We've done that a little bit. I think Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 going outside of our solar system and sending data back. But as we're kind of looking at this, this is where that optimism came from. And if you're familiar at all with early space exploration, that's where part of the dream of the future is coming from. The other one is Walt Disney was a great aid in this. There is a series that Disney made that was personally pushed by Walt himself. That was Wernher von Braun talking about space exploration. And during it, he not only pushed for us to go to the moon, which we did, he was pushing for us to go to Mars. He was pushing for us to go to other areas of our solar system and explore. And it was part of Disney's vision. And if you're familiar with Tomorrowland and Disney World or Disneyland, that's kind of the whole idea behind it, was to get people to dream of the future. Because one of the things NASA and stuff was also designed to kind of defend, and was part of the defense budget because it was going to help us defend against attacks. But the other thing is no other period in the United States' history have school-age children done better in science and math than when we were actively exploring space and things like this were being put out for the general public. When the general public, and especially kids, are given dreams of a future made better by science, and when they're given dreams of a future made better by us exploring and going out and doing the hard work to discover new things and achieve new dreams, they apply themselves better in school. And so I know people that have been critical of our current space missions, where we're going to the moon and eventually hopefully onto Mars. But one of the things that has happened because of that is NASA's not allowed to patent things, or if they do patent them, they cannot profit off them. And so new technologies and new things are available for us today because of the scientific discoveries they make while they're going to the moon and while they're going into space. And so I encourage you, if you get a chance, go back, find the Walt Disney. You can find on Disney Plus the Wernher von Braun and Walt Disney talking about the future and what the future will unveil and unfold for everybody. We'd love to do a watch along on it, but again, the House of Mouse is a little nitpicky on who can use their stuff and what you can use of it. But we're going to be covering some of these series. So this covered the 50s. We're going to get into some Korean War stuff here in this week. And then we're also going to be getting into the 60s, 70s, and 80s of kind of looking at the Cold War. Give us a little bit of a break from World War II, and then we'll get back into some other war content later on. But we're kind of getting a little break, kind of going through that Cold War period, because it was so impactful in shaping the United States and the United States way of thinking. And so we'll be hitting that up pretty hard over the next few weeks. But if you want to join us tomorrow, I think Recon Sarge is going live with Fallout 4. And then you have Friday, him coming back with another Fallout Friday. And then I will be back Thursday. We're going to keep diving into some of this Cold War, early space race kind of stuff. And we'll be talking a little bit more about the advancements, and we'll slowly work our way up through the Cold War, and then we'll go back and restart somewhere, I think probably in World War One. We got some good series that we've not covered before in that area, but we're glad to have you guys here. We appreciate you being here. If you're over on TikTok, you can join us as well on YouTube, Twitch, and on Facebook. We're a lot of places you can find us. We appreciate you being here. And again, this is not just a community for those that have served. It's the community for those that have served, are serving, or those that support. We really appreciate you guys being here. And as always, stay strong, stay true, stay Frankie, and we will see you tomorrow.
And now, our national anthem.